to listen to the Dr. Daliah Show. Sassy, stimulating medical talk radio. Any medical advice Dr. Daliah Wax gives on her show should not be substituted for an actual visit to your medical provider. And now, here's Dr. Daliah.
All right, we are back on the Dr. Daliah Show. 1-877-DOC-DALI, 1-877-DOC-DALI. So, as you guys know, I rarely take a break. I rarely take vacation. Usually most of my trips are for work, if that. But I just want to open telling you guys that if you can make it to Europe, if you could go out there and visit, do so. It's not as expensive as you think, and they actually like Americans. Now, I understand you all are probably worried that I didn't represent very well, especially since I kept giggling every time we saw the Ausfahrt signs. Apparently, when you're in Germany, Fahrt means travel or exit or entrance. Fahrt, like F-A-H-R-T. So Ausfahrt means exit. Einfahrt means enter. Guten Fahrt means have a good trip. And so, you know, when you're immature like I am, you giggle a lot. But it was interesting because I went to Ramstein Air Force Base when I was out there. One of our large bases there, Ramstein Air Base, and it was the Ramstein Air Base, I should say. And apparently you could buy hats and shirts that say Ausfahrt, right? So, you know, we Americans, we know that it's kind of cute and funny. And so I know some German because my grandmother was from German. She was from Essen. So I could speak a little bit. But what I was really amazed about is how they could pick up I was American. I don't know why, right? Probably because I'm like, where's the Ausfahrt? But also because I tipped. And once they identify that you're American, they ask for tips. Everybody says, oh, when you go to Europe, you get to save money because you don't have to tip. Well, I could hear the waiter talk to the other tables in German, and I could understand. But when it came to me, it's like, well, what kind of tip do you want to leave? Right? And trust me, I represented. I want Europe to love America. So I tipped, and I tipped well. I was probably the only person in the restaurant who did. But what's fascinating to me is, you know, we as America, we take a lot of things for granted. So when you go to a restaurant and you ask for water because you don't want to buy Coca-Cola, you don't want to spend money on coffee. In Europe, you have to pay for water. You know, so I said, you know, Wasser, bitte, you know, like water, please. And they said, do you want still or sparkling? And I'm thinking, well, sparkling, they may charge. So just give me still. Just give me the tap water out of the... They still charge for that. So you have to actually buy water. You could get pretty dehydrated in Europe because if you have to buy water, you end up not drinking as much. Yet in America, they serve you water for free. That's kind of, it's interesting. You know, the idea that everybody is kind of jealous of each other and they look down upon each other. I didn't really pick up a lot of politics when I was in Germany or Switzerland. And I think it's because they don't know how to read people. And they were pretty much just, let's just cater to the tourists. Let's just cater to the locals. Let's just keep our heads low. It was interesting because I know there was a lot going on politically in France and in Europe over the last week or two. But we in America are a lot more open about our politics as opposed to over there. Yeah, I mean, here you see somebody with a MAGA hat or you see somebody make fun of Trump or whatever. They're pretty blatant about it in public. And that's kind of a blessing of America in terms of us being able to have that freedom. But you really didn't hear a lot of politics being talked over there. And we spent my son had to go there for work. So I was supposed to go to New York for the Talkers Conference. And I decided to preface my trip by going out there with him to Germany, spending some time and then heading to New York. And so, you know, when you look, we spent a lot of time driving through the Black Forest. We drove down to Switzerland. We took a car. We drove all over the place. So we got to be in a bunch of local areas. And it was just fascinating how, you know, maybe it's because in Europe, they don't let politics run their life. I mean, it seems to me in America, people live or die by if you're Republican or Democrat. And in Germany, it seemed like there were other things. You know, we're having a beer. Prost. We're, eating our spätzle. We're having our goulash. We're driving. We're hiking. And so maybe we could learn a little something from Europe, where don't let politics be just so ingrained and immersed and infiltrated in every fiber of our body. Because I got to tell you, it was pretty relaxing in Europe, not having to always be hit that hard. I put on the TV to see what Germans are watching, and you saw The Simpsons in German, you saw Pawn Stars. It wasn't the episodes I was in, but I'm dying to see how I sounded in German. Wo ist die Toilette? Because I think I asked for the bathroom one time when I was on Pawn Stars. It'd be very interesting to see how I looked in German on that. But you saw The Simpsons, you saw SpongeBob SquarePants, and then when you looked at the news, they were talking about the weather and flooding, and it just, But if you guys could, see Italy, if you could see Germany, France, England, it definitely opens your eyes as to what you have here and how wonderful it is here. And also, understand that there's a lot of money that you pay in taxes to live out there that we take for granted living in America. There's many people that don't even tax. They don't even pay taxes. And so if you could use the miles, if you could rack up miles, if you could buy your ticket. I bought my ticket on a Tuesday, which made it cheaper. I also bought an off time to fly. There's a way to do it where you could get there, and then once you're there, it's not that expensive. Don't eat at the tourist traps, of course, but when you go into the city and it's fascinating. In terms of translation apps, fantastic apps like Google Translate, where you could take a picture or you could say something and it'll translate it for you. So it's fairly easy, and most European countries do speak English. So all you have to do is go, sprechen Sie English, and they're like, yes, American. We got you. All right. Don't even try. Okay. Now, I heard you giggle about the asphalt thing. We're not going there. So it was a fascinating trip. My stopover was in Iceland, so I was able to see the volcano. I posted those videos on Facebook and Instagram. I should post it on Twitter as well. The volcano did not disrupt travel. There was a lot of smoke. You couldn't necessarily see the lava, but there was tons of the fog and the smoke coming from that. It was fascinating. Iceland, amazing country in of itself. If you could take a trip to Iceland, do that. But I think I represented. I tipped well. I was really sweet to everybody. And when it said asphalt, I exited. And even as I left the country, it gave me a big asphalt. I'm like, all right, I'm out of here. 1-877-Daliah, don't go away.
Let's see, if something costs less, but people are happier with it, that sounds like something to look into, and that's MediShare. Maybe you've heard switching to MediShare to pay for healthcare can save the typical family $500 a month, and that's huge, but it's also true that people are way more satisfied after making the switch, too. The customer satisfaction rate for MediShare is double that of the typical health insurance plan. Double. MediShare works. It's been around for more than a quarter century, and members have shared more than $3 billion of each other's bills. People love having telehealth and a huge nationwide PPO network. So, yeah, you can save a ton and like it better. Imagine being happy with how you're taking care of your health care. So if you're self-employed or part of the gig economy, or you just want a plan you're happy with, you can call right now and get a price within 2 minutes. A very, very smart use of 2 minutes. Here's the number you need. 855-SHARE-40. That's 855-SHARE-40. 855-SHARE-40.
Hey guys, it's Dr. Daliah. Fantasy football season is coming, but sadly, too many of you are taking the bench while the country takes part in one of the most exciting and lucrative industries out there. Don't know how to play? Well, huddle up and listen. Paul Kalikas and I have written a fantasy football pocket guide for beginners. This book walks you through the basics and shows you how simple and lucrative joining or creating a fantasy football team can be. Read our Fantasy Football Pocket Guide for Beginners found on Amazon, or follow the links on X and Facebook. That's Fantasy Football Pocket Guides for Beginners. Don't be left out.
In a study, it was found that 33% of 44 herbal supplements had no trace of the advertised herb. Don't let that happen to you. Hi, this is Dr. Mitch. If you want to ensure quality, please go to TotalWellness.com. Supplements made for physicians, only now available to you too. TotalWellness.com, helping you to look good, feel good, and enjoy total wellness.
back on the Dr. Daliah Show, 1-877 Dr. Dali, 1-877 DOCDALI. Big thanks to Talk Media Network for making the show happen, and big thanks to Daniel, our producer. Don't forget to follow us on X or Twitter at Dr. Daliah, Facebook, The Dr. Daliah Show, and on YouTube, click like and subscribe. All right, so while I was out of town, many of you kind of reached out about a bunch of the things that were happening currently, so we're going to try to talk about as much as we can today. One issue was this doctor who apparently is under indictment by the Department of Justice for quote unquote whistleblowing on a hospital who was secretly performing gender affirming care on minors. Now, this has brought up a lot of anxiety in the medical community because when you are a physician and you're in training and you're a student or you're an attending or an academician, you swear to be ethical and you swear to fight injustice or unethical behavior in medicine to protect the patients. And so when you see this headline that a doctor who whistleblew speaking out, seen something that possibly was not safe or what they felt was safe, and then them getting in trouble, it starts to make doctors a little nervous. And in fact, when we interview medical students, I always ask the medical students an ethical question. What do you do if you see one of your co-students steal or use a patient's narcotics or perform something that they aren't trained to do or cover something up? And the right answer for any student in the interview is to, be ethical about it and not try to cover it up. And not ignore it because the patients are at risk. It's all about the patients. So when you see something like this happen, you're like, So many of you asked, well, so what was it? What was the charge? Well, they said he violated HIPAA. And so apparently, I think he was a resident, a surgical resident that just graduated. And I believe when he discovered that there were, quote unquote, secret gender affirming surgeries and he reported it, he leaked documents to the press, but he left out on purpose any patient IDs. So it would be less HIPAA non-compliant. You can't have any identifying information in there. Now, let's say you take out a patient's name, you take out a patient's date of birth, ID of a record. If there, however, is something medically like a tattoo or a mole, that could still sometimes be a little sticky. And we don't usually in the medical setting leak medical documents to press. So now he and his team are dealing with charges as it pertains to HIPAA, but he says he's going to fight them because there were no identifiable factors. So like if you do a case report and you are reporting on a medical marvel or a medical issue that happened, you can talk about what happened with the patient as long as there's no identifiable factors to it. If a teacher wants to tell students about a patient case, they could say we had a woman who came in X, Y, and Z. As long as there's no identifiable descriptors of there, they could use it as a teaching moment. But this is making people kind of nervous because as it pertains to gender affirming care, you would think that doctors would all be on the same page with informed consent, with how children can understand the gravity of the situation and make fertility choices that early in terms of the child's mental health. You would think all of us doctors who have been trained by very similar institutions would all be on the same page, but we're not. And so Dr. Eitan Haim has, I guess, now 4 felony charges he's dealing with as it relates to HIPAA. So he made a statement, or his attorney made a statement saying, my client is anxious to get to trial to get his side of the story told. I'm confident this will result in a correct decision being made. He leaked documents to journalist Christopher Rufo in May 2023, showing that the Texas Children's Hospital continued operating its child gender clinic against state law after they claimed it had been shut down. And U.S. Marshals entered his home, handed him a summons, and now he has to appear in court. So, hospitals have to follow laws. And so if it's tricky because if you're a medical professional, you get in trouble if you don't report. I mean, I'm not saying we all are trained to be narcs, and tattletales, but again, it's all about patient care. It's all about patient safety. So if there is remember I think there was that officer that drove by that building and it seemed like it was a lab that was operating, but it wasn't necessarily a sanctioned lab. You save lives when you uncover that there could be things being done that are not technically within the law. But there's a lot of debate in medicine on how safe it is for a child to undergo or to not undergo. The big threat we get as doctors is if we don't help these young children, they could commit suicide. And no doctor wants that on their conscience that a child will commit suicide. But we also are having more and more evidence come out that the child's depression and anxiety might not always be resolved by being on high dose hormones, by undergoing surgical changes, by transitioning before they are sexually mature or can understand what's going on. So it's too soon. It really is too soon. And we're going to be talking about some doctor groups later in the show, how some doctor groups are speaking out saying we're not ready to do this on kids. And if Europe is saying we can't do it, maybe we should follow. And so I get it's very unsettling when you have the professionals who are very highly trained and very highly educated disagreeing so blatantly on something that should really be a lot easier. And I'm of the mindset where if you have an adult who wants to transition, they can make informed consent. They're an adult. They want to transition and they want to become a woman. They want to become a man and they understand the risk. And that doctor is informing them of all the risks, whether it's blood clots, whether it's mood disorders, whether it's, whatever. An adult is allowed to make their own decision. But when you have a young child, they may not be able to comprehend. And now that you're hearing from individuals who have transitioned saying, I still would have liked to be fertile, and I still would have liked to keep some of my parts, I did not feel well on the hormones, it just shows that it's an evolving science. And we don't want to scare doctors or medical students or residents or nurses from doing the right thing when it comes to being, open about and being honest about you seeing something that might not be following the laws. And we don't want to scare and intimidate people into just being quiet. Medicine is not supposed to be a cover-up industry. Medicine is supposed to be the most transparent industry out there. Politics, it's all about cover-ups and corruption and BS, and that's why I'm not a politician. But in medicine, what did the biopsy show? Here. What procedure did you do? This. Describe your procedure. There's witnesses in the room when you do the procedure. You always have somebody in the room. There's always transparency and checks and balances. So if a hospital is allegedly secretly performing something that a law is saying you cannot do, even though they might have had their hearts in the right place where they felt they were really, really helping these younger children, the reason why laws exist is because it establishes a framework of quality assurance, of oversight, of safety. So if a hospital or medical center is doing something under the radar, they're not going through the proper protocols of safety, of OSHA, of HIPAA, because they would be allegedly doing so. And I'm not saying the hospital did this, but if that's what happened, your whistleblowing might not be just about, they're doing gender affirming care on minors. They're operating when they're not under the radar of who oversees hospitals and medical centers. I can't start doing breast surgery and cosmetic surgery in my office without informing somebody and making sure that I have to let the medical board know if I am going to do things that they are not necessarily aware of in my practice. You have to let somebody know so they could watch you, so they could oversee, so they could make sure you're doing it right. So with something like this, if this did happen, is the doctor wrong for making somebody aware of it. And I understand, it whistleblowing, it takes guts. And there's a lot of people that don't have guts that'll say, you know what, I'm going to play it safe so I don't get fired, so I don't lose my license, so I don't get targeted by the DOJ. But when you are a physician, patient comes first. It always has to be about the patient. It's not your career. It's not your family. It's not your medical license. It's the patient. 1-877-Daliah. Dr. Daliah here. Are you tired, burned out, gaining weight, succumbing to the daily pressures of life? Well, how's your dopamine doing? How you feel right now, how you'll feel an hour from now, and how you'll feel next week is completely reliant on your dopamine. Our daily motivation and willingness to push through challenges depends on the intricate chemical process dopamine provides. Christian Kalikas and I created Deploying Dopamine, a book that tells you what dopamine is, when it dysfunctions, and how to successfully deploy it when needed. Find Deploying Dopamine on Amazon today. Check it out.
Carl Amari here to tell you about our newest website for old-time radio lovers. It's 100radioshows.com. At this site, there are 5 old-time radio shows waiting for you to download free as our gift to you, and be sure to browse the additional 700 old-time radio shows available to you for 70% off by using the promo code RADIO at checkout. This is a limited-time offer, so log on to 100radioshows.com. That's 100radioshows.com.
All right, we are back on the Dr. Daliah Show. Thank you all for tuning in. 1-877-Dr. 1-877-DOCDALI. So a few years back, the pharmaceutical powers that be promised that they were going to come up with a combo flu and COVID vaccine. And this combo flu and COVID vaccine would minimize, hopefully, a lot of morbidity and mortality. And many people were excited about it. As enthusiasm dropped with the COVID vaccine, now, some people are like, I don't know, I don't even want to get the flu shot anymore. And I'm mixed because I am a huge, huge fan of the flu shot. Even though the flu shot at its best year is 65% effective against circulating strains, the mortality from flu, heart attacks and pneumonia, stroke, I can't stand the flu. Flu comes on so viciously, so robustly that I have noticed myself when I get the flu shot, I don't get the flu, and I'm pretty excited about that. In terms of combining it with a COVID vaccine, I'm going to be cautiously optimistic. The fewer shots, the better. The fewer chances, I believe, for allergies and side effects. I like fewer shots than more shots. And Moderna has come up with a combination flu and COVID vaccine. They are claiming that their 2-in-1 jab can show even better protection against fighting both illnesses. I'm not ready to endorse something like this yet. I'm kind of mixed on where we need to go with our COVID vaccines. And I'm honest with you guys. I'm really honest with you. I told you, I got the series of the COVID vaccine. I would have loved to wait, to be honest. I would not have voluntarily gotten it, but there was so much pressure in the medical community. And when I was hearing you couldn't get a job, you couldn't work for a hospital, I was like, you know what? And I also thought, which was really probably the biggest incentive for me to do it, because I didn't really want to get the shot or the series, is I wanted to be a guinea pig to show you all what happened. And thank God I got through the first 2 fine. When I did the booster because, again, I put my money where my mouth is. I walk the walk, I talk the talk, and I walk the walk. And when they were talking about boosters with the COVID vaccine, I had said, look, the strains are different. I am not going to get a third shot of the old vaccine. we have a newer virus out. If I'm going to get a booster, I'm going to do it of a newer formulation. So when they came out with the newer formulation, I had to put my money where my mouth was. And I knew that there were some people that were a little skeptical about it. I'm like, well, I'll tell you, I'll do it, and I'll tell you how it worked for me. Well, I am very right-handed dominant. And so I do not like getting vaccines in my right arm. And because my arm was so damn sore after getting the first series of the COVID vaccine, I got the Pfizer, I decided to have them put it into my left arm. Now, I also wanted to get my flu shot, so I had them put both the flu shot and the COVID vaccine into my left arm. Well, for over a month, I had horrible left arm pain, chest pain, breast swelling, and I had to put off my mammogram twice. And I was nervous because left arm and left chest pain could be heart disease. Now, I attributed it to the vaccine, but that's when I wrote on Facebook and Twitter, maybe consider doing the shot on the right, because your left arm and left chest pain will be assumed as cardiac in nature until we prove that you're fine. And so I told myself I'm probably not going to do both shots at the same time. And I personally am probably not going to get another COVID booster for a while. Now, am I anti-vaccine? No, I'm not. But here's what complicates matters. This long COVID is horrible. For those of us that are still coughing or still have brain fog or have GI issues, or long COVID is real. And when people asked, why would I have gotten the vaccine to begin with? Well, I told you, because I was afraid that I wouldn't be able to work in the medical community, and travel. That was a big deal also. I really needed to be able to travel. But another reason was I was more fearful of China than I was of the pharmaceutical company, Pfizer. I trust a lot of Pfizer products. I've used Z-Paks. I've prescribed Viagra, Zyrtec. Pfizer has made some good Catawit, Lipitor, Norvasc. And so I didn't trust what was in this virus. And I just didn't want to have it in my body. Well, it turned out you got it anyway. And when you get COVID, it could be with you for months. The symptoms could last. Some people have never gotten over their symptoms from COVID. So I'm not saying I am never going to get another vaccine, but now that, thank God, the symptoms are more mild, I'd rather build up a natural immunity. But there are still many individuals who, when they get COVID, they are in bad, bad shape. And so I will urge them to get the vaccine if I think that COVID is going to hospitalize them or cause them to have severe illness. And for those people who are vulnerable, yes, COVID can still cause severe illness. Thank God it's nothing like it was in 2020 and 2021. So do we combine the vaccines? Is it worth combining a flu shot and a COVID shot? Well, according to this was a phase 3 trial of 8,000 people split into two groups. The first group was 65 and older, and they tested this new shot in comparison with flu vaccine and the Moderna shot, the Spikevax. The second group was younger, 50 to 64. And I believe they found, and I don't have the trial results, but I believe they found significant antibody response in those that had the combo. So the whole purpose of a vaccine is for you to build up your antibodies and have your antibodies ready to go for when the real thing comes your way. And so if you have a weakened immune system, you need the vaccine. That's why we have them. But if you have a strong immune system and you have the ability to fight off illness and you're healthy, then the vaccines are more of a choice, and it's between you and your medical provider. Now, there are some vaccines I will, always get. Tetanus, polio. I don't ever want polio coming back. So I'm a huge fan of the polio vaccine. That polio was scary. Hepatitis. I mean, hepatitis is with you for life. I think the cervical cancer vaccines are fantastic. Or not so much cervical, the HPV vaccines, like Gardasil. Because having friends who have had throat cancer, HPV-related throat cancer, that's some scary stuff. So if we're doing these vaccines to help prevent cancer and some severe disease, I'm for it. But we have to understand that these are still being studied. There's a lot of data we don't have. And as we try to come up with new pharmaceutical products, which could make a lot of money for the pharmaceutical company, we don't misuse the information platform we have to make sure patients understand why they're getting it, why it's better. And you always have to be careful when the pharmaceutical company is doing their own trials, because there could be secondary gain. Now, pharmaceutical companies should be ethical and say, look, it didn't work, sorry. But if a pharmaceutical company says, look at the data. I always was taught that when you do look at data, make sure it's from an objective source also, examining the new medication and the new pharmaceutical. So flu shots are given. Usually we get our flu shot. We decide what we're going to use for the flu shot in February. We start manufacturing them after all the approval in the summer. And then they get distributed and in pharmacies by August. So you could technically start getting your flu shot by August, September. I wouldn't get it too early because flu season lasts roughly October through May. And for some individuals, they may have to get a booster flu shot. But flu vaccines coming in the fall is fantastic. The thing is a lot of times the COVID boosters are also coming out then or being urged. And so many people don't want to take two separate shots. So I am in support of us having a combo. Just don't mandate the summer. 1-877-DOC-DALIAH.
Considered by most, optimized curcumin is one of the few bioavailable and highly absorbable curcumin products on the market. Hi, I'm Dr. Mitch. Since most chronic diseases have inflammation, our optimized curcumin seems to be a perfect addition to any nutritional program. It makes sense to me that preventing or reducing inflammation is a key component to our overall health. The Mayo Clinic found that curcumin can decrease swelling and inflammation, has antioxidant properties, and research suggests that curcumin can prevent cancer, or at least slow the spread of cancer, and in many instances make chemotherapy more effective. It protects our healthy cells even from radiation. TotalWellness.com, where we help you to look good, feel good, and enjoy total wellness.
Self-reliance. It's not a phrase we hear much in our culture these days. It might conjure up images of pioneers, the West, rifles, strapping men, and strong women. But what does it mean for us in today's world? The New American Magazine has just released its latest collector's edition, Self-Reliance, Foundation of Freedom. In it, the New American authors outline the necessity of self-reliance for a free people, tips for self-reliant living, and the importance of not giving up hope. This unique edition includes articles on the self-sufficiency of the founders, preparing for a worst-case scenario, firearms, financial self-reliance, the importance of community, and many other topics by expert writers. Now, for a limited time, the New American is offering a bundle of 3 collector's editions, Self-Reliance, The Great Reset, and Trump World, for just $19.95. Available at shopjbs.org. Visit shopjbs.org today.
All right, we are back on the Dr. Daliah Show, 1-877-DOC-DALI, 1-877-DOC-DALI. So while I was at the Talkers Magazine conference, a study popped up on my radar, and it had to do with COVID vaccines allegedly fueling a rise in excess deaths since the pandemic. And the article, published in the British Medical Journal, is entitled Excess Mortality Across Countries in the Western World Since the COVID-19 Pandemic. It's Our World in Data estimates of January 2020 to December 2022. And when you look at the study, it explored the quote-unquote excess mortality in the Western world. So did more people die, more than the expected number of people die? That's excess mortality. So what that means is, let's say you have X number of heart attacks happen a year in Western civilization, or X number of strokes, X number of drug overdoses. And so those numbers, based on the growing population and all that, you could graph it. You could tally it. But were there more deaths than you would think should have been? So they said excess mortality was assessed as a deviation between the reported number of deaths in a country during a certain week or month of 2020 until 2022 and the expected number of deaths in a country for that period under normal conditions. They used the Karlinski-Kovacs estimate model, which uses historical death data in a country from 2015 until 2019 and accounts for seasonal variation and year-to-year trends in mortality. They said the total number of excess deaths in 47 countries of the Western world was over 3 million from January 1 to January 2020 to December 31st, 2022. So basically from January 1st, 2020 to 2023. Excess mortality was documented in 41 countries in 2020, 42 countries in 2021, 43 countries in 2022. They said in 2020, the year of the COVID-19 pandemic onset and implementation of containment measures, records present over 1 million excess deaths. In 2021, the year in which both containment measures and COVID vaccines were used to address virus spread and infection, the highest number of excess deaths were reported, meaning more people died, 1.2 million. In 2022, when containment measures were lifted and COVID-19 vaccines were continued, preliminary data present 808 excess deaths, 808,000. So the reason why that kind of seems pretty long-winded is, and these are researchers, this was published in the British Medical Journal, is because somebody could say, Dr. Daliah, the excess deaths were because of COVID. So people died because we lifted the lockdowns. And they're saying no. After the lockdowns lifted, and after the vaccines had already been out and, maybe people were not that hip on getting a booster, the excess deaths were still higher, but less than when we had the vaccine rollout and the lockdowns. So they conclude that excess mortality has remained high in the Western world for 3 consecutive years, despite the implementation of containment measures and the COVID-19 vaccines. This raises, quote, serious concerns. And these authors are saying government leaders and policymakers need to thoroughly investigate underlying causes of persistent excess mortality. So, we have said from the beginning that the vaccines are an evolving science. We don't know if there could be long-term effects. We don't know if it could weaken somebody's heart, affect their immune system differently, make them more weak as it pertains to the COVID virus, because we're not letting natural immunity build. And there were people, both physicians and non-physicians. I saw my Facebook followers bring up very valid scientific questions of the COVID vaccine. And one had asked me straight up, they're like, Dr. Daliah, if I get the vaccine, then my natural immunity is not going to get primed. It's not going to learn the vaccine. Now, they're not wrong, but we were at the time concerned that if you got COVID, you would end up on a ventilator or die. So any sort of protection was better. But we still need to entertain the fact that natural immunity might have needed to play a role. And I had said we cannot underestimate the role of natural immunity. And we need to study that. And then later studies came out saying, it looks like the best immunity was when you had a combo immunity of both natural and the vaccine. Thank you. But what people want to know with the study is, did the COVID vaccine cause people to die? And then are we going to die sooner because we got the vaccine? I don't believe so. I would not have gotten the vaccine, had my kids get the vaccine, recommended to those who were high risk, if I thought that the science behind it was going to be a type of detriment to our health. The reason why I was convinced that I wouldn't have any long-term sequelae from the vaccine is the mRNA technology as it was presented to us, where it's very highly degradable and your body learns the spike protein, makes the spike protein, trains the body on it, should not be technically oncogenic, cancer-causing, should not necessarily be causing heart attacks, things like that, but could still cause myocarditis, pericarditis, inflammation of the heart. It could cause issues. We're not going to be naive, but I was pretty confident that I wouldn't be doing myself in. And it was with the knowledge they gave us. It was with what they told us. And as a doctor, unfortunately, you got to go with what the CDC says, and you make the best educated decision you can if you aren't there in the lab yourself. But I just wasn't hip on multiple vaccines and not entertaining the fact that maybe natural immunity could be another route. So what do we do now? Many of you are regretting ever getting the vaccine. I hear that from family members too and friends. Go, I wish I never got it. I wish I never got it. I wish I never got it. And I don't blame you for being upset. And it's frustrating. Having seen COVID kill, though, I didn't want to get COVID. And, to go back and say you would have died from COVID, how do we know? To go back and say that, you would have, not had a side effect from the vaccine, how do we know? We won't know for sure. But 2020 and 2021 happened, and it was very poorly managed. And this article tells us that we need to really, again, listen to people like me, right? Where we slow our roll and we investigate what it is we did, learn from our mistakes. And honestly, what mistakes did we make? Number one is there was no oversight over the labs in China. All labs should have oversight. Number two is there should have been immediate investigations. Actually, there shouldn't have even been funding to the lab. I understand we work with multiple countries and we collaborate, but that was a mistake and a seventh. You don't provide funding without there being full transparency. All right? We allowed politicians to lock us down and to take liberties with us, and we forced people to wear dirty masks and not, get the oxygen they needed. And we came up with these ridiculous rules when doctors said, look, guys, there's a better way to do this. We shunned doctors. We sanctioned them. Medical professionals who were trying to teach us, they got quieted and silenced. Nurses who didn't want to get the vaccine were kicked out and lost their job. So then we had fewer staff. We never built up our hospitals. We never recruited more staff, trained more staff, so we wouldn't be in this mess. So we made a lot of mistakes. And now we need to see, did we make a mistake mandating the vaccine, which I think was a mistake, in this excess death study? 1-877-DOC-DALIAH.
Did you know that healthy arteries make a gas? Yes, actually 3 known gases. Hi, I'm Dr. Mitch, and nitric oxide is a gas that's readily made all day long to keep our arteries open by relaxing the blood vessel walls. By doing this, our circulation is increased, bringing blood, oxygen, and nutrients to every part of your body. Both age and poor diet can lead to a loss of this precious gas, and in turn, blood pressure can go up, energy can go down, and you can get tingling in your hands and feet. Well, our product, Ultimate Nitric Oxide, can easily help fix this lack of nitric oxide. Go to TotalWellness.com. That's TotalWellness.com, where we are helping you to look good, feel good, and enjoy total wellness.